Hello, my name is Nikolai Steiner. I'm an architect and I'm an associate professor in urban design. And in this video, I'm going to introduce sketching as a means to design development. And by sketching, I don't only mean what we normally think about sketching to be something that involves pen and paper, but as much other materials and techniques such as scale models and even computer models in order to develop your design in a quick and explorative manner. So this is not about how to do all the nice presentation drawings, but rather how to do quick doodlings in different media and in different scales and also in different projections as a way to actually create your design. And the drawings are meant mainly as a way for yourselves to understand what you're doing and to communicate with your design team if need be. So the video is going to be a little long, but I hope that it will be interesting anyway. Enjoy. So let's get started with sketching or design development. First, I want to briefly discuss the work environment. You need, of course, a work table. You will need paper. We normally use this kind of tracing paper, which is quite thin and semi-transparent. You will need a ruler. That's essential. This one has different scales to it, which is quite important so that you always measure to the right scale. And you will, of course, need a pen. This is a fancy one which has a thick and a thin end to it. You may also want to use adhesive tape for like sticking your material to the tabletop. I'm not going to do that just now, but that's quite nice that stuff doesn't like shift around while you're working. So in terms of pens, now I showed you the fancy one, but simpler ones can do. First, you should definitely have a fat one to make fat lines. You may also want a thinner one, but to start out with, you would not use that too much. These are incredibly thin, but this is a 0.8 millimeter pen, which I would consider thin for sketching. And a simple fat one like this one. So they come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, but make sure at least to have a fat line one like these ones. A thin one may come in handy, but it's not absolutely necessary. Or you may, if this is not too good anymore, use one which has both a fat and a thin point built in. The ruler, apart from measuring distances on your drawing, also doubles as a cutter for the tracing paper. Because if you put it against the rolled paper, you can very easily cut sheets off, which is quite convenient while you work. Apart from felt tips or other pens, you may also, of course, use drawings. This is a set of different drawings with different sort of hardnesses to them. They come, you should definitely go for the softer ones. This is a 2B, which is medium soft, and they go all the way to like really, oh, this one's broken, really fat ones. The advantage of pencils over felt tip pens is that you can change the line by way of the pressure when you apply, and this one is broken too, that's really bad. If you press lightly, you can make a very light gray, and when you press harder, you can make it soft. So it's a very versatile drawing instrument. You may also, of course, do hatchings, and if you change the angle of the pen to the paper, you may change the stroke thickness. So pencils really are the most important tool for the designer. You may also have, of course, these kind of fancy pens with kind of a core to them, which you can exchange. They come in different, again, different qualities. And of course, you need only to change this part once the pen is out. And you can buy extras, and you can buy different softnesses and hardnesses and stuff. A separate set of pens, of course, is color pens. Coloring can be very nice in drawing, because you may actually apply different sort of textures to the drawing. And if they're like fancy ones like these ones, you may even take some water and you can sort of smudge them. This is very nice, but it's done very quickly. So with a bit of technique, you can also obviously use a brush to do this. Also, I want to mention this strange instrument, which is basically just a smudger, like a cardboard instrument, which you can use for smudging pencil strokes. Of course, that wouldn't work on felt tips strokes, rather than getting your fingertips dirty. So, but really, I mean, sorry, you can basically use any pencil. So you may also take whatever comes out of your bag or clutch when you empty it. Just make sure that they're relatively soft. Now this is a school pencil, which is kind of medium softness. F is another way of demarcating softness. Here's a 4B. So you see, these are really no fancy ones, but you can definitely use just very cheap and basic pens as well. Anyway, for now, I'll stick with the felt tip ones. Let's take the other ones away. And therefore, I now want to take a new sheet of paper, because you may have noted I started out with the felt tips, and then I added pencil, because you should never draw with a felt tip on a paper where you already started out with a pencil, because you will simply ruin the tip immediately, like in seconds. So let's just do away with this and use the tips for now. Now, while this demo of how to do sketching or design development really applies to all scales of design, whether it's architecture, urban design, or product design. But in architecture and urban design, what we will need additionally, typically, if we work on a site, which mostly we do, is a map. We need a map of the site so that we can refer to all the elements which are already there, and it needs to be at an exact scale. This is a scale 1 to 1000. It also has a small scale over here indicating 0 to 60 meters. And when it's 1 to 1000, I will find the scale 1 to 1000 on my scale rule. And I can check here that it's exactly correct. 6 centimeters here is 60 meters. That's true for scale 1 to 1000. And we want to always work to an exact scale, and it has to be a scale which we can actually find on the scale ruler, because working at a specific scale trains us to actually know the sizes of things when we work. So once you've done sketching in the scale 1 to 1000, let's say 100 or 200 times, then you start knowing the width of standard width buildings, the sizes of parking bays and trees and all these kind of stuff that will eventually fill your drawing. So while we may be doing the majority of our sketching in scale 1 to 1000 in this case, We may also want actually to have a slightly larger map and a smaller scale. Scale 1 to 2000 is this. So now 6 centimeters equals 12. So we have to find scale 1 to 200, and again we can see this is exactly 120 meters. This may give us a larger area, and please note that I'm working here always with A3 sheets. In Europe they come out of the printer very easily, and it fits with the width of the 30 centimeter tracing paper. So that's a handy size. You may of course do large scale printing and do larger base maps. You may want that for large sort of master plans and stuff, but mostly what you would prefer would to go down in scale. And to this end I have also here a third map, which is scale 1 to 5000, and again we want to find the correct scale on the ruler so that we know exactly, we can measure exactly distances, widths and so on. So and this actually takes us to, no, I just want to show you also, actually I did some printouts here and on the same scales like the maps. I have here an aerial photograph, which is autographic, meaning that you can actually measure. Of course there is some sort of depth perspective, but it's made to cover the same area like the scale 1 to 1000 base map from before. The aerial photographs, you wouldn't actually necessarily draw on top of that, but they're very good for reference because, for instance, here we can see that there's a lot of trees which do not show up hang on, in the base map. Here there's just simply this blue indication of some kind of water body. And of course you may also want to have the aerial photographs at different scales if you want to examine stuff which is further away from you. I mean, most such maps now are layered, so you can turn on and off different layers before printing. I'll just give you an example that I'm actually not going to use today, I don't think so, but just to show how you can actually extract different sort of views from these composite maps. This is a map of only buildings. So everything which is white here just indicates that there's no buildings. We cannot see whether these are roads or green spaces, private or public spaces, or even spaces with trees on, or water, or the harbor front, or whatever. We only see where there is buildings and where there is not. We also sometimes refer to this type of map as a figure ground map. So because we can kind of very easily as architects see the different typologies. Like here there's detached housing, here's like perimeter blocks, these are like housing blocks here, and this is some inner city sort of medieval kind of stuff with wiggly streets and so on, and small buildings on presumably on small lots and so on. So different maps at particular scales is quite essential when you work. Before I move on to actually doing some sketching, I just want to provide you with a little bit of theory. Sheet of paper. Because what I will be doing while sketching is that I will be sort of operating in 3 different modes, and to that end I'll just draw a quick little 3D coordinate. You may actually also think of this as your hand. Oh, I should do like this probably, because you may try to mentally consider what you do as something that operates along 3 different axes. On the vertical axis we have scale. Sometimes we work in a small scale, so that would be, in this case, maybe scale 1 to 1000. But we will also work in a medium and in a large scale, and that's quite important, and I will demonstrate that shortly, that you zoom in and out between scales. also, so here we call that scale. We will also change as we do our design development between different projections. Now, what is that? Well, when we have a base map to work from, we will work in plan view, but sometimes we would want to do elevated drawings to look at the sections and elevations and so on. So although this doesn't really work along an axis, just let's pretend it does. So we will have plan view, we will have section view, and we will have, we can also have an isometric view. That's when we kind of do three-dimensional drawings without using a CAD software. So along the third axis, we will change our media. So far, we've only been working with drawing instruments and paper, but so pen and paper is definitely a very useful medium when we do design development, but sometimes we may also do scale models. This can be, we should think of this as working models, like to examine and test and model our design ideas, rather than doing presentation models for final presentations. We can use any kind of model material. Popular materials are like styrofoam, this kind of bluish stuff, often comes in different colors also though, or corrugated cardboard that you can easily, it's a cheap material that you can easily stack and cut and so on. Or as we will be doing today, you can also use Legos. Rub your kids or your kid brothers boxes of Lego for these kind of blocks, because they're going to be very good sketching materials for you in your design development. So that would be a different medium, scale models, and of course we may use any kind of CAD modelers, like Rhino or SketchUp or Revit or whatever we got at on our computers. So basically just think of design development and sketching as something that operates at different scales, large, medium, small, in different projections. Sometimes you work in the plan view, sometimes in the section view, or in the isometric view. And also as something that may happen in different media, like pen and paper, scale models, or CAD models. Anyway, so let's get started. Now I have, as I said here, a 1 to 1000 base map, and what I want to do first actually is not sketching at all, because as a way to get started, I'm going to actually trace what is already in the map. And this may sound a bit odd, but it actually makes a whole lot of sense when you get to think about it. Because by tracing, and now we might actually, just because it's flying around a bit, I might actually just quickly add some adhesives. I'm not going to fix the base map because I'm going to change that, but I just want my tracing paper to not fly around. Just quickly add one here and one down here. So actually, as I'm a right-handed person, I also want to fix this corner, otherwise it's going to fly around. Now we'll give it 4. So then we're all set. So because by tracing or the objects which are already there is a kind of analytical process, because when I put the pen to the paper and I trace this box, by the way, this is a technical base map which has lines for driving lanes and sidewalks and streets. These gray boxes indicate buildings, And these lines are some kind of either property lines and maybe sometimes also physical barriers in the terrain. Over here, there's something that might look like a parking base and stuff like that. And by tracing those, you have to consider what they actually are. And you see there's all kinds of irregularities at this building. I may be more or less I may observe those more or less in detail, or I may simplify them. Because by tracing those, two things happen. First, I learn about the actual environment. When my pen runs over these buildings, I realize, for instance, this is a U shape, this is a linear block, and this is a fatter linear block, and it may make me start to wonder, what are these buildings really? And this is a different typology yet again. It's more like an atrium building. It may be, because it has this kind of courtyard interior to the building, and so on. And over here, there is a strange building which has kind of like different components that sort of meet each other at different angles. So I may start wonder about what this even is. And then over here, I see some blocks, probably housing blocks, that kind of shift. And on one side, I get all these kind of little things. It doesn't matter that I don't do it very precisely, but it makes me think. And actually now I think that these are balconies. It could be balconies from the way the technical base map was composed. And now I'm bored with that, so I'll just continue like this. So you see, now I realize that here there are some freestanding blocks of housing, whereas in this case, I actually have something which looks more like an inner city perimeter block, something that has buildings along the sidewalk on all four sides, producing an interior courtyard, which is in here, which is why I kind of guess that this is actually, that these gray things in here probably are little sheds or something, pavilions inside the courtyard. So I'll take out a thinner pen, still meticulously trace everything, because it's a way of recording whatever is on the side. I also now realize that there's some thin lines here indicating that these might actually be individual buildings which have been built next to each other, as it's typical in older inner city urban areas. This would explain why they're not all have the same width. This one is more narrow and this one is wider. So that's probably what's behind all of that. So, and I would of course somehow complete this. I could also actually, and this takes me to something which I didn't demonstrate before, I could actually add in some a fill color. And for that, I use, in this case, marker pens. You know, marker pens typically have two ends, a pointed and a flat one. And I could do that for all of them, because then this kind of base map would stand out more once I start putting new layers of tracing paper. Now I just want to shake upon my suspicion about this building. Oops, I want another one. And to this end, I'll take out the aerial photograph, because you see from the cast shadows from this building when the sun shines, it's a very long cast shadow, indicating that it's actually a rather tall building, whereas this one has a shorter cast shadow, indicating that it's probably a lower building. So that was my hunch. This one I had no idea about, but it seems that it's kind of also quite low. And here, of course, I can see some more detail about how the building is composed. It has a one-sided slanted roof, whereas this one seems to have a flat roof, and so do these ones with all kinds of technical stuff on top of them. So this may be good to refer to. And actually here now I see that this
fatter building, which is this one, seems to be lower than this one because it casts some a drop shadow onto the roof of the next one. So these are definitely little sheds and pavilions in the interior of the courtyard. So I seem to be right about that. I also realized that this green, I may want to transfer that. It seems to be within this property line, and it's going down here somewhere. Of course, I can do this as I printed the maps so that they're exactly overlapping. I can actually say that, well, it seems like this planting is something like that. So I'll just add this so as to not to forget. I can see that there's also some trees over here, and there's a huge intersection here. Anyway, so now I have an idea of what the context is all about, which is very useful. Furthermore, I kind of, and that's the second thing that happens when you trace the existing context, is that you calibrate your hand, so to speak, into understanding the scale of, in this case, 1 to 1000, because now I realize that this is the typical width of a housing block, so that might come in handy. And now I want to just set out and do some first initial sketching. First, I need to trace in the plot that I'm working on, and I'm just pretending that it's something like this. Actually, I made this up. So let's say that this is the plot where I need to do some kind of development. And I also know that this part is going to be some kind of park. And then I need to consider both how my development interacts with the property line, because here in the neighboring plot there's a car dealer's building shop, like a cars on show and a workshop or whatever. And this is housing, and so is this, and this is actually a fire station, and this is more housing, so on. So, and my first idea now, I don't want to continue drawing on this one where I put the property line, because that might get in the way later. So now the first thing I want to do, and this is really one of the advantages of working with tracing paper, and you should use many sheets, and you shouldn't put too many mixed informations in each sheet. Actually, tracing paper was used as the metaphor for layers in CAD applications. So before there was CAD, when designers used only tracing paper, they would work on different sheets, and then they can take out sheets. So my first attempt at doing a design is, I know this street is wide, so it probably has a lot of traffic on it, and traffic generates noise. And also, as north is facing this way, we can see that from the north arrow, which is also in the base map. I want to kind of shield off the interior of the plot from that noise by putting a building all along the street front. I want to just shift it down a bit, something like that, set it back a bit from the street, and then I may want to just align it with this thing over here, this building. So this would give me this kind of hockey stick shape kind of building. And then here I want to put something which is sort of filling in the space. And first I think maybe I'll put a building perpendicular to this. And I may actually do the same thing up here. I cannot build too close to the property line because and there needs to be some space because the neighbor may do the same like I do. And then this could be like a standard width building, just like this one. And maybe I'll just do a slightly fatter building just here or something. I don't know if there's room for another one. Maybe I can change this a bit, and then I can have another one like this. So this gives me a nice footprint, I think. I just want to quickly hatch in this and that and this, and then I change this one. So you see, I can actually start modifying, and really that's what sketching is about. It's not about only just getting ideas in my head and then drawing the ideas. It's also about understanding from the lines that I draw what comes out of it. And now I'll just put a new sheet of tracing paper, because now I want to shift my focus to something else rather than the building. And I don't know if I'm going to be successful at my first take. Typically I wouldn't. And then I would not want to screw up my this one down here, because now I realize I need to consider parking. And maybe for parking, when I kind of need to just align the different layers. So for parking, we have the street up here. I have this idea now that maybe you can enter here and you can exit down here or something. So that would make it possible maybe to do like a very long line of parking all the way here and here, and just basically to put tons and tons of base, just like that. And then there should be, of course, an access way where the cars can actually drive. Now, I didn't consider now whether this would go both ways or one way, but I'll just consider this as a possibility to get in and out through here, and to get in and out through here. And now I happen to know that this center line of this street cannot be crossed. So you can only enter from this side and you can only exit from this side. So I'll have to remember that. And then just in order to sort of remember that now this is space for parking, I just add a big fat gray here. I don't know whether this is going to be sufficient parking, but I may just do a first attempt at that now. Next thing I want to do is I want to analyze what are then the open spaces that I have left. Not a whole lot, it seems, because this is a building. I may want to put, if it's possible, a little front yards to the ground floor here, or actually maybe I won't, because if this is a big street, maybe the ground floor here will be occupied mainly by stores, so they wouldn't need any sort of front yards, but these ones certainly would. And then I could add some front yards here, which would be private to the ground floor apartments. Same thing maybe here. I'm not sure that. And why do I want to do that? Well, obviously this is going to be sunny in the afternoon, because the sun will be coming from the south at 12 o'clock, and then people would typically come home from work and they would have time to enjoy the open spaces in the afternoon, so that's when they will be sunny. And this makes me think about the facades of this building, maybe, and this is where I will now shift to a different projection. Maybe I want them to have balconies in the facade. Consider this to be a facade. Here's a tree, here's another tree. This is just in order for me to remember that this is how this facade might actually look once I get work into more detail. So, and here, I don't know, this could be some kind of recreational space, something like this, and I could develop it even more. I now also want to consider where to enter the buildings. I would probably want the entrances to be from the interior of this courtyard and not from the street. because it would be strange to put one's car here and then go out on the street and then enter the building from there. So the entrances should be somehow located meaningfully relative to the parking. So maybe there's a footpath coming down here, maybe this one is accessed from here, something like this. And of course I can develop this even further as I go along. So now I just cheated a bit, and this is a different view. You see I did another drawing, and I tried to sort of color code the entrances and so on. And now I actually want to consider a section, or an elevation rather. So I'll put over a new sheet of paper, and actually what I can do now and this is a very, very simple and very powerful technique actually, because if I want to have an elevation, let's say along this line, really what I can do now is just draw the ground level of my elevation, and then I can trace the lines from the buildings as they are, and I can use those to draw my elevations. And let's assume that this is like a 5-story building, and we can roughly put 5 stories or a story to 3 meters. So at scale 1 to 1,000, 5 stories then would be 15 millimeters, and I would take out my scale ruler here, and that would go up to here somehow, and then I can just add some floors, and maybe this should be then a tower of, I don't know, maybe let's say 8, so that would be 24 meters, 8 stories, and I could add in the stories and so on. And this building is going to be in front of my my projection line, so I may just add that as a dotted building, and all along the back I will actually be able to look at the building in the back. So I'll just draw that in something like this, and this is where it will hit the cut. So now I can actually just take this one, and I can develop it further, and I can add whatever detailing I want to do to that. And again, I cheated a bit, so I added in some trees and vegetation from the plan that I drew just before, just to have an idea of what the quality of these courtyard spaces would be like. The width relative to the height of the buildings and so on. But now really start thinking about whether this is actually the best way to fill this strange site with the buildings, because I came to think about the fact that these blocks over here, they're organized perpendicularly to the street, with all the gables facing the street, and maybe putting like a very long facade along here would kind of distort this street space. So now I want to actually test if I could do something similar. However, and now I want to just keep this, even though I'm going to modify it, because what I want to do now is to just use this as a base, because I have some of the elements that I want to keep. Let's just align it with the base down here, something like that. And also I came up with a new idea, and you see this is not something that I premeditated before I started drawing. This is basically ideas that pop into my head from the drawing process. And what I want to do now is I want to actually put something like this, a kind of bent block, and I want to put another one here. And then a third one, maybe here somehow. And then a fourth one, which is actually just going to be the final one, because now I have this idea, maybe we could have a public plaza out here. I still want, however, to have like a building along the street facade. And so I'm thinking about just adding a low building, and just in order to sort of make a mental note or a visual note for myself, what I want to do actually is I want to have these kind of gables, just like over here, standing perpendicular to the street. And now I actually reversed the section, and then these can have any number of floors. And then there should be a low building just riding down here, because if we see that in section a section like this, then we would have like the low building sitting here. This is the street with cars running here forth and back, and then we would have the taller buildings sitting maybe something like this. So, and the noise from the cars obviously would not affect the interior of the courtyard down here so much, so we can have a more quiet space, even though this building here is shorter. Also, I may now think of this as a kind of public plaza, which is part of the sidewalk situation along the street, something like this. Obviously, I should have to consider parking for this one also. And again, I cheated a little bit. Now again, I want to consider how to get the parking in. Maybe not, may not be quite visible here, but really the idea again is to get everything in here, to have a kind of thoroughfare through the buildings, and then cars can go all the way in, and then out here somehow, and then there can be tons of parking. There can even be parking down here, and there can be parking down here. So that's a different parking design, basically. So that's, and now I can take away this one, because that was only in order to sort of give me some guides for the next one. So you see, now it's more clear what is at stake. Now the open spaces would be here. And actually here, down here, you see a small sketch, which I made just before, just reminding myself what these gables could actually be like. And I had this idea that they could be like have a structure, something like this, with some setback facades with maybe some balconies and stuff. And then down here there would be basically like a shopping facade in the ground floor, and then either housing or offices in the first floor of these lower buildings that sit in between. So again, I changed projection. Now, again, I'm not overly happy, so I want to do yet another design. And I've cheated a bit here again. So here's the drawing now. Really what I wanted to analyze was the large scale situation. So I took out, so now I want to analyze the large scale situation, because I came to think about a fact that I didn't consider just before, namely that we do have in the large scale a green space coming up here somehow. And then on the other side here, there's another green space. Looks like a big jambon, a ham. And then there's going to be this kind of water, which is going to go underground here, and then it pops up again here and goes out this way. So this leaves us with a particular situation right here where our plot is. And I came to think about maybe testing out a different structure, because here we have the perimeter block from before, but in a smaller scale. And then we have the blocks of housing over here. And I wanted to consider what if I could somehow repeat that pattern over here with some kind of perimeter block, and then a signature building here somehow. So that would then maybe provide a kind of link between this park and that park, spatially and as a sort of identifier of this space. And I cheated a bit, so here we go. And this is what came to me. I tried to actually add what ended up as two U-shaped blocks, because I wanted to have a kind of passage way through from the big street into the park, and then maybe a circular building at this plot. So now the public plaza has actually become quite large, and now I want to test an idea that I got for how to actually work with the building heights of this of these two blocks. And to that end, I will use my Legos. These Legos obviously are not quite to scale if they're supposed to be 10 meter wide buildings, because actually a Lego is 16 millimeters or something like that. So they're going to be a little too wide, but that'll do for now. It's just in order for me to clarify how the spatial concept is going to be. And so now I have kind of like a situation a little bit like this, because what I wanted to test is whether the building could be tall facing the street, and then it could be stepped down towards the park, so that there could be kind of like terraces for some of the apartments, which could be very nice. And now I actually get this idea, maybe I can put them entirely together and set this one back a bit. So I'm going to try to do just that. And now what I could do would be to take out my camera, but I would like to sort of do a photograph that I can then print out and trace over with my pen. But I need something to indicate the circular building here, and I don't actually want to do that with Legos. But it just so happens that I have this old Coca-Cola can, which is, it may be way too tall, but it kind of fits the perimeter. This may be slightly oval, this is circular, of course. And now I could actually just take out my camera and I could take a photo, which I will do. Now, here's my photo, straight out of the printer. And I can trace that over. I just want to put white sheet in order not to get distracted. And then what I can do now is to basically start tracing the Lego blocks to get an idea of how this kind of development would actually look like in a 3D rendering. And now here we have circular building. I'm not going to draw it all the way up. I'm going to just pretend that there's something here. At least I got the position and the dimensions right, if not the height. And then there's a building over here which I didn't really consider, like that. And now I can start to get an idea of what this could actually be like. So I want it to be just low down here, and then I want it to step up a bit. It's not exactly what the bricks are, but that doesn't matter. I can use my spatial imagination to just sort of add that in. Something like this. And same thing over here. So that's actually not too bad. And this is the park. Not quite sure how it's going to end. I'm going to just make something up. And then there's some buildings over here that I'm not really specifying a whole lot either. Maybe something like that. And now I think I have enough detail to simply just start, you know, maybe adding some facade detailing, just to have an idea. And really these are just like indicators of scale basically. There could be a railing around this thing. Obviously here we would want all kinds of large windows, another railing, and so on and so forth. So I guess you get the idea now. So this would be maybe something like a roof terrace. Could have different kinds of plants like this. It's not supposed to be any kind of like super cool presentation drawing, but it's just something which will make me understand just what this could be like. And here's the cylindrical building. Maybe it should have an interior courtyard, something like that. And it should definitely have an access to the courtyard. And maybe, oh, there's a water coming up here, so maybe it has something like this, more trees, and probably a pathway of some sort. And I could again start coloring this thing. Actually, another trick is to color on the back so that you will not kind of smudge the black pen, and you may actually also miscolor the marker pen. But if you do it on the back, it's gonna be it's gonna look actually quite nice, and you will not smear the drawing. You may actually want to just go with this one. Now, I want to do just a gray to indicate the path, like that. And now I want to turn it over again because I actually forgot about the water body. I'm going to put it there. So, little sketches like that can be very helpful in not just clarifying to yourself, but also to your design peers what you actually have in mind. And it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do little sketches like that. However, I want to test out just one more design. because I think maybe the one with the cylindrical building and stuff got a little too complex. So now I made yet another design. And it's basically just one building that zigzags its way along, and then we still have the public plaza in the front. We have the water body, we have some pathways, the humongous parking space down here, and very limited private green space for this development just to the back of the building. And now what I want to do is I want to actually mock it up in 3D using a CAD program. And to this end, again, I will just take a photograph and I'll put it into my CAD modeler. So I'm going to take out a computer and do some CAD modeling. Let's see. Just take out the mouse. And I'll add the photo. Got it right here. And we'll put it in here. Doesn't really matter how we scale it now. I'll just draw a line, because I know that the sheet of paper was A3, so it's 42 centimeters wide, meaning that in scale 1 to 1000, this line from one end of the sheet to the other is going to be, oops, to do a line, of course. So this line is going to be exactly 420 meters. So if I measure it, and I tell the system it's got to be 420 meters, yes, I do want to resize my model. Now I'm actually working to scale. And of course I already prepared this. So here we have a scale model of what I thought. Just mocked up the surrounding buildings very quickly, and from the scale drawing, from the sketch, I modeled a building that sort of rises from 3 floors on one end to, let's see, 8 floors on the other. So it's a slope over 5 floors. And I also wanted to put like a big archway through, because the whole idea here is to kind of connect the park on one side with the park on the other side. And then I mocked up some trees from my drawing, so that I can very quickly have a base for doing another sketch. And then I put a tree on this side, because I thought it might be neat to sort of have one big tree right in front of this thing. So let's print those out and see what we can do with them. So this one, I got this one and that one. So basically, again, now just like with the photo of this Lego model from before, I can trace this over and indicate what I think this could be, what this could end up looking like. So I'm not gonna finish that. I'm just gonna basically just give you an idea of how to quickly work in this kind of hybrid mode of working in plan, doing little elevation sketches, taking photographs of Lego rig scale models or printouts from CAD systems, and then I could basically just render this, and I could have like all kinds of elements that I could add in, and I could spend whatever amount of time. Maybe I want to emphasize this as a kind of signature building, and I could possibly do the same like before, do a giant frame like the idea I had before, and then I could have some balconies. Something like that, and in here there could be some kind of windows, and I could have like a shopping window just down here, something like that, and I could then try to explain the spatial concept here by adding a cast shadow. That would be something like this. Actually, I want to do some hatching, sort of indicate what I mean. I mean, this is going to be a very quick and rough sketch, but just in order to sort of give you an idea that this can be done really very quickly. Street coming here, and here, over here, whatever. Cloud. So, basically to wrap up, what design development is all about is to sort of find a way to make very quick sketches, test your different ideas, switch between the plan view, the section view, do modeling, whether with physical material like the Legos or a CAD, print it out, take photos and render them over, sort of to explore your design ideas from many different angles. Try to always be precise when you work in plan and elevation mode. You should always be able to actually measure exact distances, because as you get better at it, you kind of get to know the width of typical buildings, the width of parking bays, all these kind of stuff. And also you consider different aspects in combination, which quickly go back to this one. It's not just about the grand gesture of putting the building that sort of rises up to the plaza, producing this kind of signature building. This is something that when people come in this major intersection, they will remember if it's well designed, and the tree and the plaza as well. At the same time, this building functions as acoustic barrier, separating the noise of the big intersection in the street from the interior, whether that is the private open spaces or the park down here. So you consider all these things all at once, and then maybe you focus at some point on one thing, and then you shift and you focus on something else, but slowly you build it up, and by testing different layouts and different compositional strategies, slowly you will get an idea of what will work and what will not. So basically this should be your main activity throughout design development. Also something that you could easily start on before actually visiting the site, because once you do the analysis that we started out with, you may have questions. I want to understand what this is like, or what this is. And then when you visit the site, you already have ideas about what to study while you're there. In reality, often you will only be able to go once, and then you need to be as informed and beforehand before going to visit the site. And that's why doing some initial sketching before actually going to the site is a very good idea. And then, of course, you add whatever knowledge you have about the brief for the design, the constraints, those maybe planning constraints about how much you can build and how tall and whatever. And all these informations will feed into your design ideation when you try out whether you should do it like this, whether to do it with the circular building from before, etc., etc. And now I demonstrated this at the scale of site design, but whether you do a single building or even a product design, it's actually the same procedure. So basically what you got to do is to take out your pen and paper and start designing. Remember the three aspects, the scale, small, medium, large. You have to switch between those. You also need to switch between different projections, whether plan view, section, or elevation view. Actually, you could also do an axonometric. That might be something like this one, which is actually made straight from the plan view when you simply add height to the plan. So it's not a true perspective, but it still gives, it's a very cool way of doing a three-dimensional sketch to analyze different aspects of the design. And of course also, apart from scale and projection, there's also your media. So sometimes you use pen and paper, sometimes you use a physical modeling material. And again, remember, the work models that you do in order to explore different design ideas and test them, not to do nice presentation models. And then of course also the CAD models, where you can work again similar to your when you do your work models. You do something which is quick and dirty. You don't need to be very precise to do this. As you see, I work straight from the sketch, and in order to simply test stuff, so I can put myself wherever I want and see what it looks like from that exact position. What if I want to take a look through that gateway from the plaza? Maybe I want to print this out and add by hand some storefronts and maybe even some cafes with outdoor seating, or the grocery store displaying its sort of produce or whatever. So that's what you can very easily do using a CAD model. You can do, of course, also more sort of bird's eye perspective stuff and so on. So this is basically how you should sketch, how you should do your design development. So to wrap up, make sure you have a proper workspace. You should actually also have good lighting. Now I turned on the light, that's not very nice. I'm going to turn it up again. Now I can actually see what I'm doing. You should have enough space for all your tools and your pens and stuff, so that you can actually do exactly what you want to do during your design development. Thank you very much.